Before introducing my topic, I'd like to share with you an Arabic proverb that my mother often said to me. The saying goes, كل شيء يزيد عن حده ينقلب ضده. And its literal translation would be, everything which exceeds its limit in practice no longer yields its same benefits. So what does that mean? Well, let's use food as an example. We all love food, right? We need food. But when you eat unhealthy amounts of processed sugar, you increase the risk of the likes of type 2 diabetes. We need food because it gives us energy, but when you bite more than what you can chew on, literally, you increase the risk of diet-related diseases. Now, in my case, my mother often used this saying in regards to my education. And let me start off by saying that I absolutely love learning. And I'm generally just a very curious soul. So that also meant that I wanted to do well academically. So it was really in online schools that I began to struggle slightly. And I figured I had to work as hard as I could to yield the results that I wanted. So I did. Or I tried. I tried and I put all my energy and efforts and all my time into school. And it came back to bite me. I wasn't doing as well as I hoped. I was exhausted and, frankly, to be honest with you, it was mostly due to all the other stuff that I neglected. So if we go back to the proverb that I shared with you guys, was it possible that I was working too much? I placed all my time and efforts into school, so it only makes sense that I would yield good results, correct? Wrong. You see, I neglected my health and many other aspects of life that were vital, and frankly, that came back to bite me. So I'd like to share with you what I broke down into three main aspects of life that we can focus on when trying to achieve a balancing lifestyle. And the three aspects are as follows: mentality, physical health, sociality. And with that, I'd like to start on mentality. And I should mention that for mentality, everything from mindsets to mental health is included. And I'd like to speak to you about a mindset, or rather a perspective. And with that, I'm sure most of you guys have heard about the half full, half empty glass perspective, where some people deem the glass in front of you as half full, and others deem it as half empty. Now, why is that? Well, psychologists suggest that if you deem the glass as half full, then you lean towards optimism. And if you think the glass is half empty, then you lean towards pessimism. Now, what is optimism and pessimism? Well, in short, optimism is having a completely positive outlook on life, whilst pessimism is the exact opposite. So they both have their respective pros and cons. So does that necessarily mean that one is greater than the other? Surely there was a way to maximize their pros. That's where I'd like to introduce to you realism. And realism, as I explored it, takes the best of optimism and pessimism and combines them, reducing their cons and maximizing its pros. So back to the half full, half empty glass. How would a realist react to the glass? So a realist might say that the glass is half full if the water had been poured into it. But if the water was previously full and someone had drank from it, then the realist would consider it as half empty. Now, to further elaborate on how a realist would be in contrast to an optimist or a pessimist, I'll give you a bit of a scenario. So let's say you fail a class test. An optimist may say, I'm sure it's a one-time thing, I'll do well next time. And a pessimist may say, I never do well in this subject. There's just no point. But how would a realist react? Well, a realist would react as follows. The realist may realize that some things are out of his hand, right? And that would mean that they would focus on whatever was in their hand at that moment to do better and improve. Off onto physical health. Now, for physical health, I'd like to talk about sleep. Or rather, the lack of it. When's the last time you remember waking up feeling refreshed? If you can't remember, then that might be something you want to focus on fixing. So when it comes to sleep, science tells us that the dangers come from the lack of sleep. Now, upon pondering and looking into this topic, I've come across a passage that I'd like to share with you guys. And it's from the book, Why We Sleep, by PhD Matthew Walker. And the author states, "The old maxim, 'I'll sleep when I'm dead,' is therefore unfortunate. Adopt this mindset and you will be dead sooner, and the quality of that shorter life will be worse." So why is it so unfortunate? Well, as the author states in his book, that it is mostly due to the dangers of lack of sleep. Dangers of lack of sleep include increasing risk of cardiovascular diseases, as well as disrupting blood sugar levels, increasing risk of anxiety and depression. Okay, so how do we get better sleep? Well, giving yourself a regular bedtime helps, because then it's easier for you to fall asleep. Giving yourself a non-negotiable 8 hours of sleep is also preferable, as well as, well, the last one, that might upset some people, but it's also preferable or advisable to avoid caffeine 6 hours prior. On to our last aspect that I'd like to speak on, sociality. When it comes to sociality, we humans are social beings, and whether some of us like to admit it or not, we're meant to live in a society. And we see often that only with teamwork and cooperation do we as humankind really advance. So let me give you a bit of an example. Let's say in a hospital or a surgery. In a surgery room, you may have a surgeon, an anesthesiologist, a resident, a medical student, a nurse, a medical technician. The point is, everyone does their part to achieve a bigger goal. With that, I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as well, but we might sometimes want to do everything on our own. It may feel more fulfilling that way, or there may be other reasons. But the point is, we humans don't know everything. And it's hard to admit sometimes, but we need help. And we try our best. That's the whole point. We don't need to be perfect. We just strive to be the best versions of ourselves as we can. In conclusion, I've talked to you about 3 aspects that we should focus on when it comes to a balancing lifestyle. And especially in times such as the pandemic, this is especially important. With that, I'd like to leave you with one last thing. Is there anything you've been neglecting lately? If something popped into your head, then there you go. There's something to work on today. And you can keep doing that, slowly working on yourself to achieve a balanced lifestyle. With that, thank you very much for listening.